and another 1,800 injured. The fighting broke out after weeks of power struggles between the two generals who seized power in a 2021 coup. 3 African members of the 15-member council, Ghana, Gabon and Mozambique, released a joint statement calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Fighting has been going on almost uninterruptedly. It's a very fluid situation, so it's very difficult to say where the balance is shifting to. We are calling, of course, on both sides to stop the fighting immediately, to allow access for aid workers, humanitarian aid workers, and to allow evacuations. We also we strongly request both sides to respect the need to protect UN agencies, UN installations, embassies, aid workers, medical facilities. There have been grave transgressions here. To be very honest, the two sides who are fighting are not giving the impression that they want mediation for peace between them right away. Rather, they are calling on the other side to give up or to surrender.
And let's go to the north of the continent, where the head of Ennahda party, Rachid Ghannouchi, has been arrested. Ennahda Vice President Mondar Lunisi said Ghannouchi had been taken to a police barracks for questioning and that his lawyers had not been allowed to attend. Ennahda party is one of the main opponents of Tunisian President Kais Saied. And this arrest is the latest in a string of opposition figures held.
قلت مع شغال فترة بالضبط في رمضان المعظم في ليلة 27 اداهم فرقة أمنية كبيرة نسبت نفسها للفرقة الحرس الوطني بالعوينة منزل الأستاذ راشد غنوشي رئيس حركة النهضة ورئيس البرلمان، وتم تفتيش بيته. يقولون إنه الأستاذ راشد غنوشي رئيس حركة النهضة موجود فعلا في ثكنة العوينة، ومنع الآن من الدخول والمشاركة أو الحضور في عملية الاستنطاق.
Now to South Africa, where a court in Pietermaritzburg has ordered a 4-month postponement in the much-delayed trial of former President Jacob Zuma, who faces charges of corruption in an arms scandal dating back to the late 1990s. The High Court postponed the case till August 15 after Zuma's attorneys submitted a fresh bid for prosecutor Billy Downer to be recused. Zuma's legal team argues that Downer is at the center of a private prosecution by Zuma and is therefore unfit to be part of the case. Judge Nkosinati Chile presided over proceedings following the recusal of the previous judge in the case Pierre Cohen. Zuma and the French arms company Thales are facing more than 700 of charges, including frauds, corruption and money laundering in relation to the multi-billion-dollar arms deal procurement, which took place in 1999.
By agreement, this matter is adjourned to 15 August 2023 for the hearing of Mr. Zuma's second application for the removal of Mr. Downer, State Counsel, as prosecutor in the criminal trial. That application is set to run for 2 days, that is 15 and 16 August 2023. Paragraph 1, the state is to file answering papers by no later than 26 May 2023. Paragraph 2, Mr. Zuma is to file his reply by no later than 19 June 2023. Paragraph 3, Mr. Zuma's heads of argument are to be filed by no later than 17 July 2023. Paragraph 4, the state's heads of argument are to be filed by no later than 31 July.
In West Africa now, where the trial of Guinea's former premier, Ibrahim Fofana, on embezzlement charges has been pushed back to May 15 for health reasons. Fofana, deposed in September 2021 in the military coup that also ousted President Alpha Conde, is charged with embezzling more than $4 million in public funds intended for economic, political and social programs. He's also suspected of embezzling over $14 million in aid to combat the COVID-19 pandemic in the West African country. Fraud prosecutor Josephine Loli Tinkiano said the trial postponement was granted because Fofana, who has been jailed since April 2022, was undergoing perfusion treatment for an unspecific or specified medical condition. Well, that's all we have for you on the news at this hour. Let's bring back Olive and Osalgie for the rest of the program.
Thank you very much, Blessings. The South African courts are packed full. You know, it's never end. I enjoy it. It feels like never-ending drama in the court system in South Africa. If it's not the president or the presidency or the former president, it is Thabo Bester or it is some, there's just something going on all the time.
You know, South Africa has been at the center of the news for a long time now, with the accusations, criminal issues, and then the Thabo Bester case that really does look like a movie.
Absolutely. We certainly want to see how that case ends, and I sense that there have been people who have been calling for a documentary to be made out of Thabo Bester's story.
Yeah, definitely.
It does look like it's well on its way to being done. What I would hope is that documentary is done by South Africans, told by South Africans, and not by somebody else.
So that's what I really doubt. I don't think that, because it is not a story that South Africans are proud of, but I know that it's something that
it is a story regardless. That's what entertainment is. That's what art is.
Yes, so it's unfortunate that Africans do not exactly see that aspect of it, right? Some of these things that happen, they try to hide it, and then other Western countries see it and see the prospect of making money off of it, and so they make movies. And that's why some things that happen in Africa, you see, the Western world portray. And when we give these stories to the Western world, they portray it in a way they want to portray, not exactly what happened or how it should be portrayed.
Africa must tell its story, which is why New Central is here to be that voice that tells African stories. Definitely. Thank you so much, Blessings, for joining us with Breakfast Headlines.
Thank you.
Right now, let's take you through the countries in the continent, looking at the papers and seeing what the front pages are saying. Feel free to engage with us on any of them by tweeting at News Central TV.
And we begin on the Daily Sun newspapers this morning. It's on the aviation strike. Passengers stranded. Airlines suffer losses as federal government begs union to call off strike. You can also see a picture there of the Labour Party chairman, Julius Abure, of course, and president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and of course, a member of the National Executive Council, Northwest Wisdom Wanchukwu, and head NLC International Department, Uche Ekwe. During a visit of the NLC to the Labour Party Secretariat of Abuja yesterday, they had a solidarity walk, I believe. Kidnapper buries a 3-year-old boy alive after collecting ransom in Katsina. Gunmen kill community leader in Kaduna. Abduct 8 in Benue. Kidnappers kill victims' aid. Injure 3 policemen in Rivers. It feels like, once again, like I said yesterday, we're back to it right after the elections. Everyone is resuming work, including kidnappers and the bandits and who else. Abga crisis. Police withdraw amended charge against Njoku, Justice Odili's secretary. Also, INEC hammer falls on REC over Adamawa gubernatorial results mess. We can also find on the Daily Sun this morning, Election Petition Tribunal strikes out case against Kalu. Stop premeditated injustice against Igbo Archbishop, says Onuaga. And finally, Oshimbajo warns against ethnic religious profiling in politics. That's a very, very fast call he's making. Because, very timely also. Very, very timely.
It's the shade for me, Osalgie. That your shade is so intense.
Better late than never.
Right. Yeah, that's another positive aspect
better
to it.
late than never.
All right. Now let's still stay in Nigeria and see the Daily Trust away from the Daily Sun. Although that shade you threw is a shade that can protect people, because the sun is
the weather
high.
has been really,
and it's Daily Sun that you read. Yeah. Dry jokes. Okay. All right, Daily Trust newspaper this morning says Adamawa PDP supporters protest give INEC 72-hour ultimatum. Binani heads to court, insist on Rex declaration. INEC shifts emergency meeting to today. Embattled REC suspended. SDP candidate seeks disqualification of Binani and Fintiri. Cholera kills 79 in Kano Bauchi, Oshun, Abia, Cross Rivers, and 7 others. Tinubu micromanages team more than Buhari, says Fashola. Driver jailed 15 months for celebrating election victory with company's vehicle. this is what Fela said when he said, when trouble sleep, Yanga go wake up. All right, Nigeria becomes second nation to approve R21 malaria vaccine, and that's on page 7. Passengers trek as workers protest at Lagos airport. This story is a story that deserves the biggest headlines, or some of the biggest headlines. I will just put it in the corner, and I'm hoping that we're talking more and more about it. Please, the airline saga is something that impacts every one of us in one way or the other. There are people who will not be able to meet up with medical emergencies because of these airstrikes. There are people who will not be able to meet up with business deals or family engagements, or be able to go and just be with their loved ones or their sick family members in their last moments because of incidences like this. And let's not further push this. Labour Party crisis, Abure, others remain suspended, court insists. That's all that we can take this morning on the front page of the Daily Trust in Nigeria.
All right, let's go to Kenyans, who was on the Daily Nation newspapers. MP's new bid to block high county taxes. You can read more on what that is about on the Daily Nation this morning. It says, of course, in finance, if the bill is passed, KRA would collect levies for the devolved units. Also in Kenya this morning, at least, there's less of the stories concerning Raila Odinga and the protests, and some of all of that is gone.
I know.
A couple of weeks ago, that was all
everywhere.
Raila
Ruto.
Yeah.
This will be one of the few times we're not seeing a Raila or a Ruto story on the front page.
Yeah. Also on the Daily Nation this morning, fresh push to spare jobless graduates from paying interest in HELB loans. That's on the back page. And Harambee to collateral, the big headache of hospital bills. We can also find here, Boston Marathon, Shabbat Obiri rule U.S. streets. Congratulations to them. Single runway haunts JKIA as flights suspended. Cargo planes take off aborted after bird strike. These are the lead stories on the Daily Nation newspapers this morning.
And the final paper this morning, Daily News in Zimbabwe. Kamisa alone won't get there, Shenengamu says, as he calls for an opposition coalition. Charumbira in doghouse is another story. We also have at the top of the paper, base setters. Platinum caps prove their mettle on page 14. And music fans spoiled for choice on Uhuru Day. This is what we have this morning on the front page of the Daily News, and that's all the papers that we get this morning. Remember that you can participate with us in the newspaper reviews and the front page reviews. If there are stories that you'd like to talk about, share with us a tweet and your thoughts via News Central TV on all social media platforms. Alternatively, if you do have videos that you'd like to share with us as regards some of these stories and the happenings in your area, be our eyewitness reporter by sharing these videos via WhatsApp with us and sending them via email as well. We like to have you be the eyewitness reporters. Thank you very much for being a part of this. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be delving into our top stories for the second hour.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the story straight.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
On News Central TV.
our African stories by Africans for Africans.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now let's bring the conversation down here to Nigeria. It seems as we count down to May 29th, 2023, the inauguration of a new government in Nigeria after the presidential elections was recently held, there seems to be more drama than an intriguing soap opera, more, of course, excerpts than a breathtaking interview, and more unveiling than even a brand product launch. First, it was the alleged leaked audio conversation of the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi and David Hundeyin, the founder of Winners Chapel. And now there's new and more, of course, interesting drama, an alleged expose on the APC presidential candidate Bola Ahmed Tinubu having dual citizenship of Guinea and Nigeria.
What makes this worthy of conversation this morning is the same reason that has made every Nigerian speak about this recent expose. One, is it constitutional for the number one citizen to be a presidential candidate or a president-elect rather to have dual citizenship? What also makes this conversational is that this alleged expose has been brought forth by the same person, an independent journalist who had done a documentary to speak about the president-elect. This morning we have joining us David Hundeyin. Good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Over the weekend, or in the past few days, social media has been abuzz with the hashtags, of course, as a result of your leak and the documents that you have purportedly leaked. Now, I think I'll start from the back and then we get to the front. Your account has currently been suspended as a result of this. Tell us, first of all, why you are handling this, how you're handling all of this, and why the investigation into the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, or in this case, the president-elect.
Okay, so let me start from the issue with my account being suspended. It hasn't actually been suspended; it's just been temporarily locked, which is what happens when a certain number of accounts reports a post of yours, and then Twitter automatically responds by locking your account and then gives you the choice to either delete the content and immediately regain your account, which I can still do if I want, or to go through the appeal process if one believes one hasn't done anything wrong. In this case, I clearly haven't done anything wrong because according to Twitter's own platform policies, the policy on privacy of information doesn't apply when the subject is a public figure and when the post is done in the public interest, which is what this is. Now, what has happened here is I actually got hold of these documents quite a number of months ago. I wasn't able to put it out at the time because there was a fear that it might be traceable back to the source. I was told by the source that I should give a certain period of time before putting this out there, which is why waited until a few days ago to put this out. And what this document proves, beyond any conclusive shred of doubt, of reasonable doubts, is that the president-elect has in fact committed the crime of perjury, which is lying under oath. Now, on his INEC EC9 declaration, which is essentially sworn affidavit stating one's intention to run for president, there are several questions that are asked on the affidavit. One of them is, have you ever obtained citizenship of another country? And on the INEC EC9 form, he ticked no. Now, this document proves that he has in fact obtained citizenship of at least one other country that we know of, which happens to be Guinea. Now, one can have several theories as to why, in the first place, what he was doing with the Guinean diplomatic passports in the first place, but that's not the issue. The issue is simply that he did not declare this on his EC9 declaration, a lie on his sworn declaration, which is the crime, which constitutes the crime of perjury. On the same EC9 form, there are at least on at least 3 other instances on the form. There are other things which can arguably be constituted as perjury, but this is by far the most obvious one, which is why I think it has elicited the kind of reaction that it has. If there's something close to well, I won't call it a regret, but the ongoing presidential election petitions, which have been lodged by the 2 main opposition candidates, Abubakar Atiku and Peter Obi, for whatever reason, haven't made direct mention of this issue. One would hope that maybe they might be able to add this issue in, because the point is, if one is going to become president of Nigeria, then the process by which one becomes president of the country must be valid. Now, if the INEC EC9 declaration, with which one declared one's intention to run for president, has fraudulent information on it, has false information on it on the sworn statement, then what that simply means is that the person who has filled in that false information under oath is not just unqualified to run for president. Under Nigerian law, perjury is a very serious offense that attracts 14 years in prison. So these are issues that the Nigerian court system must answer.
David, what do you expect, would be the response? I know you would definitely not speak for them, but I've seen interviews where, for example, the former governor of Lagos State, was asked, similar question concerning the Guinean citizenship, and he seemingly answered a different question. And there's also been some type of distraction between what exactly your points are, which are perjury. Some people have tried to make it he could be disqualified from running from being president-elect, or some of all of that because he has double citizenship or dual citizenship, which of course the Constitution clearly states that you cannot have if you're going to be president, some of all of that. So what do you expect will be the response or the outcome of some of all of this? And I'm saying that also because we've seen in the build up to the elections, before people even went out to vote, that you had put out, other report, investigative work that didn't seem to deter a lot of Nigerians from whatever decision they were going to make, towards the election. So how do you think this will turn out? The reaction, first of all, from the APC and from, the president-elect's camp, and generally what this would end as?
So first of all, I don't expect that there will be a reaction or a direct reaction from the APC. Judging from what the reaction was, in fact, which was to report my Twitter account, it seems to me that what the APC is going to do is just stick their fingers in their ears and hope that people stop talking about it and hope that it goes away. Bear in mind that this isn't the first time that I specifically have raised the issue of perjury. I published a story about it in November, which wasn't focused on this particular instance of perjury. But as I said, there were several other instances of perjury on the INEC EC9 declaration. I put forward evidence in that article, for example, that the Chicago State University certificate, which is submitted with its INEC EC9 declaration, was in fact a forgery. And on the INEC EC9 declaration, one of the questions asked is, have you submitted a forged certificate to INEC? He takes no. I presented very compelling evidence that what he submitted to INEC was blatantly a forgery. So after I put the story out in November, there was a very, 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 very loud and pointed silence from the camp of the APC, because there was simply no defense. And I don't expect this time to be any different. I don't expect them to come out and actually attempt to address this directly, because again, there is simply no defense. It is very cut and dried what has happened here. What I suspect will happen is more people will continue doing what the outgoing Minister of Works did in his most recent TV appearance, where he sort of obfuscated the issue and started sort of raising a related issue, which is more or less a red herring, which is the issue of whether under the Constitution, someone with dual nationality is allowed to run for president. The reason I call that a red herring is that there is actually it's a legal gray area. So there is, I believe, Section 38 of the Constitution, which states that someone who is running for president is not allowed to have dual citizenship, except they had that citizenship from birth. That if you obtained citizenship, then you're not allowed to run for president of Nigeria. However, there is case law precedent which states something different, which states that as long as you have Nigerian citizenship, the fact of having dual citizenship does not supersede your rights as someone with Nigerian citizenship to run for president. So, which is why I said it's a bit of a red herring, right? Because you can argue back and forth all day, but the real issue for me is the fact that there has been a very, very clear and obvious instance of perjury, something which is clear and obvious even to a legal lay person, that this person has lied under oath.
I mean, you've highlighted that really there's going to be some back and forth as regards Section 28 sub 1 and Section 137 sub 1, and what the court interprets these to mean, as well as the cases that have been established before. Let's talk about you, David. There are some who think that this might have been a case of a personal vendetta that you might have against not just the president-elect, but against the political party of the All Progressives Congress. What are your reactions to that?
Well, my reaction is the same as it always is, which is that have I presented evidence or not to back up my claims? Have I said something that is true or not? Have I told the truth or have I told a lie? So far in my 4+ years of independent frontline investigative journalism, there is yet to be a single instance where someone has successfully proven that something I put forward in a story or something, a story that I have broken is false in any way, or has successfully taken me to courts or anything like that. That is yet to happen in just over 4 years of practice. So I think that tells a story on its own. So if anyone believes that this is the product of a personal vendetta or whatever, again, I think of that as a red herring. I think of that as a distraction, because the real issue is it true or is it not true? I presented evidence. I have presented evidence in this case. So the question is that Guinean diplomatic passport, is that document authentic or not? That's the question the APC should be answering, not whether the motivations of the person who put that into the public domain are what they would like it to be or not.
Yeah, let's now, also talk about, who you expect to take this information that you put out and run the APC. Of course, like you said, you expect that there would be silence from the All Progressive Congress camp and, of course, from the president-elect's camp. Who would you expect to run with it? There is, and that's the initial, why I asked the initial question, like when you see things like this, you would expect that this would be the biggest story across the country. There would be conversations about this, because Nigeria has gone through its electoral process. There's, of course, tribunals, of course, that are going to be coming up in just a short while. So who would you expect to run with this information, and do you think that they will, from what you understand and what you know about Nigeria?
So from what I understand, the two major presidential post-election, that's that of Peter Obi and that of Atiku Abubakar, both have a chance to differing extents of actually being able to possibly introduce this as evidence or as issues in their ongoing petitions. From what I've been made to understand, from advice from a frontline legal practitioner, the presidential petition of Atiku Abubakar was worded in a more open-ended way, which might lead to that particular petition being more able to potentially introduce this as an issue in court. The Peter Obi petition, not so much, but there's also a limited possibility of somehow maybe being able to introduce it in another guise, since perjury was also mentioned in that petition. But ultimately, it will be down to the court, actually, or the tribunal, actually, to decide whether or not to actually admit this as an issue, or to admit this as evidence. But be that as it may, I believe even without this, there was already very strong and compelling evidence of the APC's presidential candidate having blatantly perjured himself on the EC9 declaration, and I believe both opposition parties have been aware of this since last year. So I don't know what their strategies are, or whether they actually intend to introduce this. Certainly neither of them has actually reached out to me to get whole information, or to try and get more background on it. But basically, I'm kind of like you in this situation. I'm a spectator like anyone else. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen.
I just want to clarify, did you say that they have reached out to you, or none of them have reached out to you yet?
No, they haven't. Neither of them has reached out.
All right. I think on a final note for me would be, you tread in really, really complicated waters, Dave. Is it that gives you the courage to keep treading in these uncomfortable waters and staring uncomfortable conversations without fear for yourself?
Well, it's because I believe that in a country of 200 million people, it's not possible that the entire media landscape of that country, of such a very large country, should be subsumed to the interests of such a tiny group of people. I don't believe that it's possible that in a country this big, and with the sheer number of journalists and the diversity of media platforms that there are, it should be so difficult to introduce this as an issue, as a valid issue. So the sort of media blackouts which has been enforced on this and other related issues specifically relating to that specific political candidate, I have an issue with that, right? Because if this person hasn't actually come into office yet and is already able to impose such, blatant media blackouts on discussing real issues, then what that tells me is that if this person is actually sworn in, this person is actually allowed to take office, then journalism is an endangered species in Nigeria. So there has to be at least one person from within the ecosystem that is willing to act in an unconventional manner, or to act in ways that maybe journalists are not typically expected to act in this part of the world, and to say, look, this is what the situation is, this is the evidence, and this can't go away, this shouldn't go away, regardless of what the impact is on, the potential for personal endangerment or whatever. The truth is that 200 million lives are at stake here. So this has to be addressed. This cannot just go away. Our lives have value.
I also, want to quickly mention, we live in a country where we saw former Chief Justice Walter Onoge, kicked out for something that normally Nigerians would, the way Nigerians are, you normally would say, well, that's not even a big issue, but he was kicked out of office, for stuff like that. So you would expect that same country would see perjury as something, if found guilty, if these things are investigated by the right offices, and the president-elect found guilty, then you would say, okay, maybe perjury will be a big enough issue for us to have another look at the president-elect, and if he will be sworn in and some of all of that. But Nigeria is an interesting place. But I also wanted you to ask if any of these, if your previous investigative reports, the money that of course was seized by the United States government allegedly from the president-elect, the connections, if any of these things have similar connections, the allegations of drugs and drug funding as alleged, if any of these things have the same, if they're connected in any way.
Yeah, they definitely are connected. It's all the same story, and it's a story of his entire past, whose entire history is mired in this wall of controversy, this wall of silence. So you have someone who has questions surrounding source of income. You have someone who has questions surrounding potential identity theft. You have someone who has questions surrounding false work history claims, false academic history claims. false declarations on sworn statements, who for whatever reason chose to obtain citizenship, and not just citizenship and hold a passport, a diplomatic passport of Guinea, which is possibly which is now possibly West Africa's closest thing to a narco state. I mean, just a few days ago, it was reported that 1.5 tons of cocaine was seized in a ship that was docked out in Guinea, destined for Europe, because that's the route now. So the global cocaine trafficking routes going from South America to Europe goes from Brazil to West Africa, using countries like Guinea especially, and then on to Europe. So of all the countries, someone who has been linked credibly to drug trafficking before, of all the countries to obtain citizenship of and to hold a diplomatic passport of, why was it that one specifically? These are questions that must be answered. And so far, there has been no answer.
And we see you trying to do more work in unearthing some of the reasons why this is happening, and how the answers to some of these questions like you have posed.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. David Hundeyin, thank you so much for your time this morning, and we look forward to having you join us again.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now let's still talking about the elections in Nigeria. Following the stern announcement made on Sunday by the Adamawa Resident Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Yunusa Ari, which saw APC governorship candidate Aisha Binani Dahiru declared winner, the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC has directed that he stays away from the state and from all activities concerning the elections completely. It was alleged that the REC had received the sum of 2 billion naira to perpetrate the act by taking on the role of announcing a winner, a role that is not within his constitutionally given authority.
Meanwhile, the candidate of the All Progressive Congress APC for the Adamawa governorship election, Senator Aisha Binani Dahiru, has filed a motion ex parte before the Federal High Court in Abuja, seeking to stop the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC from nullifying her declaration as winner of the governorship elections held on March 18th and the supplementary poll of April 15th. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting, because now when you say you want the court to not nullify your declaration as winner, it means that you simply are ignoring the fact that the person who declared you winner was not even meant to declare you winner in the first place. So how does the resident electoral commissioner of the state simply just walk in, declare you winner, you go on television and give some acceptance speech, which was aired by the Nigerian Television Authority, and then go home and tell yourself that you're the winner, even before the results were fully counted? The returning officer, who is meant to be the one to declare winner of the election, was nowhere to be found. So I'm not sure what exactly their plans are, and I've looked at what the Electoral Act says, which I think they are banking on. I think Section 39, then Section 149 and Section 152, which they are banking on to give them some, case in court. Yeah. These things are irrelevant if the if the returning officer himself was not the one who declared you winner. If there is an illegality, yes, through which you are declared winner, then you cannot go to court and say that. I mean, so what she is saying now is that any human being could have gone in front of a television camera and declared her winner.
So I think the summary of that would be on the legal maxim that says you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So I think that would be how I would cap it up. You can't say that the court should not. There are questions as to the validity of your office, and these questions lead back to the person who announced your result. I think the concern should be more about finding out. You can't make legality out of illegality, right? So I think the summary would be, you cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand.
And just for clarity, just to quickly mention the Electoral Act Section 25, which is this is what the Act says. Anything else as outside this is null, void, useless.
No legal effect whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. The Act says the result on all elections shall be announced by the presiding officer of the polling unit, ward collation officer at the registration center or ward collation center, local government or area council collation officer at the local government, and then the returning officer shall announce the result and declare winner of the election at the registration area or ward collation center. In case of councillorship election in the Federal Capital Territory, you could go on and on and on, and find out exactly what is required for a state, but it has to be the returning officer.
It has to be, right. So we, of course, will be following up with this story, and we urge you to also stick with News Central as we bring you updates there. Let's share with you what's still to come this morning on Breakfast Central.
This morning, marry your mother if you can't trust your wife, says Peter Okoye.
And of course, we share with you what our top story of the day is, but that will be right after Trendwave with Elizabeth Musa.
Welcome back. You're still watching Breakfast Central, and now you're on to Trendwave. Now, since the weekend, there has been a public uproar in Kenya's capital of Nairobi after a 26-year-old woman named Withheld was captured in a viral video giving birth on the floor at the corridors of Mama Lucy Hospital on Saturday. It was alleged that the woman was forced to deliver in the corridors after being denied access to the maternity ward by the watchman of the hospital. Let's take a look. Nairobi's Health County Executive Committee member Anastasia Nyalita has, in a statement made on Monday, acknowledged that the incident indeed happened, and she termed it disheartening and unfortunate. She acknowledged that a lot needs to be done to avoid future occurrences of similar cases, and in response to this, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has disbanded the Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital Management Board and appointed a new board. Now, this is so disheartening, and there are reports that this isn't the first time issues like this have happened in the same hospital. We'll take a look at how people are reacting to this story straight away. Askyo Nyayi says Mama Lucy has been terrible ever since its inception, with labs around the hospital where you are sent because the doctors have deals with the ones at the labs or own the laboratories. Now, the whole institution needs an overhaul. I've never seen a worst service delivery institution in my life. That's according to Askyo Nyayi. Kivuva says people go there for lack of options. Poverty is the enemy here. If people had options, public hospitals, especially those run by the county government, would never be optional. Nix goes on to say people go there because they cannot afford the exorbitant fees paid in private hospitals. We'll take one last comment. Daphne says it's high time the government made this health center secure. Healthcare should be the most accessible service to citizens, and that's absolutely correct. But let's move back to Nigeria, where popular Nigerian singer Peter Okoye, popularly known as Mr. P, has weighed in on the alleged divorce saga of PSG and Moroccan defender Achraf Hakimi. Let's recall that reports which broke out on Friday said that the World Cup semi-finalist had left his wife Hiba Habak, who went to a French court to seek a divorce, demanding half of the PSG star's properties following his involvement in an alleged rape accusation. But to the greatest surprise of the 36-year-old Spanish wife, the Moroccan star had zero belongings and had put all of his properties in his mother's name. Reacting to this, Mr. P took to his Twitter page to question why most men are rejoicing because of the footballer's story. He further advised that if you can't trust your wife, don't marry her. That's the post according to Mr. P. He says, I don't understand why most men are rejoicing over this Hakimi story. Like, I don't get it. The truth is bitter, but needs to be told. If you don't trust her, then don't marry her. It's as simple as that. And it goes on to say, are you expecting your wife to suffer after divorce? Now, his reactions has, of course, gained a lot of eyeballs online, with many people asking him if his twin brother shared his property with his ex-wife. Let's take a look at some of the reactions to this story. BOD, which is quite popular on social media, Twitter precisely, says, these days it's not about trust or no trust. Every woman looks like a saint before marriage.
It's after marriage that they turn into something else. If your brother knew his ex-wife will behave the way she did too, he wouldn't have married her in the first place. That's according to BOD. More reactions to the story. Energy Upman says, Hakimi's wife was 12 years older than Hakimi. She knows the game and Hakimi outsmarted her too. They are both Ogbon, but Hakimi is the real definition of Sodiki. Now that's in local parlance. More reactions to the story. Apostle Gaddafi says, did your brother divide his asset 50-50 when he divorced his ex-wife? I'm just asking. My guy, keep quiet. Nobody they support bad thing when he no favor them. Well, Samuel goes on to say, don't roast him, guys. Is the one that sang, chop my money, I don't care. But that's as much as we can take on Trendwave this morning. Quite interesting stories, if you ask me. The first one, not so interesting, quite pathetic. But this one, quite interesting. I want to bring you in to just take a bit of your reactions, Olive and Osauge.
To the story of the one who gave birth on the floor in a Kenyan hospital. It's a sad story, but it's not an unimaginable story, because even in several parts in Nigeria here, there have been stories of women, unfortunately, who I remember a friend of mine being pregnant and going to a hospital, and they were saying to her, better pray, all the beds are occupied, pray that one woman will give birth so that you see a bed to have a baby, right? Until they found out, she had to call someone that knew someone in the hospital, and the bed was created for her. And that shouldn't be the norm. It's just it shows us how much vacuum we have in the health sector and how much work that needs to be done. The work should be done in improving the healthcare sector, rather than, some would say that, that should be the focus, as opposed to passing bills to restrict medical professionals from going for greener pastures when they don't have conducive work environments here in Nigeria. But away from that story to the P-Square story, it's just, he was just sharing his thought and he just collected stray bullets. Who's that tweet that just threw stray bullet at him? But I do agree with him, like, you should be able to trust who you choose as partner. And if you don't trust them, you have no business marrying.
I agree. You should trust who you choose as partner. It's a lifetime decision for a lot of people. But at the same time, I think, it is dishonest that, he makes a statement like that with regards to Hakimi, disregarding the details concerning, this particular story.
It would be that, okay, so he started from, as a teenager, the mom had been...
I mean, there's many details. First of all, the fact that there's a lot of sports people who have been taken advantage of by women. And gotten into marriages with these players only to find ways to sneak out of the marriage a couple of years later and then wreck them completely financially. And so there's more and more sports players who are becoming very, very more protective of their wealth before marriage, because they are a target of some of these women. So there's that part, and at the same time, his story in particular, he got married, but she met him when he was 19. He was a Champions League winner with Real Madrid. She was in her 30s when she met him. And so I think he has a good point. If you don't trust your partner and some of all those things he's saying, I agree. But the peculiarities of this story, it's just not the right story to use to make that point. The Hakimi story is a very, very peculiar one, and we should not ignore the little details concerning it. And also, anyway, that's
it's how everybody's just giving hot takes on this Hakimi story.
And I think if I was president, we should make a law, on social media. Stop arguing marital stuff you're not married. Don't be single 21-year-old in Ibadan arguing marital stuff. When
on that note,
you know what? I just want to actually commend the governor of Nairobi, Joseph Sakanja, for just going ahead to disband the board of Mama Lucy Hospital. I think that's quite a very proactive approach to things like this, because in Nigeria things like this happen and nothing is done. But if that's going to be the answer to the questions people are putting out there, then good for them. As for Hakimi, I just hope that it works out well for both of them at the end of the day.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing with us Trendwave, what's trending on the web. Now, let's share with you what's happening later today on News Central. At 1 p.m. West African time, we'll take you beyond the continent.
And at 5 p.m. West African time, we're giving you one slot.
And 8:30 p.m. West African time, it's game on. So much for joining us today, this Tuesday for Breakfast Central. We hope that you've had a great time, and we look forward to being here again same time. Do remember that you can catch up with our interviews on YouTube for the ones that you've missed, and on social media at News Central TV. I'm Olive MOD.
And I'm Osauge Obama. Thank you very much for spending your Tuesday morning with us. And like I said, if I was president, if you're not married, don't be giving hot takes on marriage on social media. Stay out of it. Let people who are married talk married conversations.
Because like they say in Nigeria, who no go,
Exactly.
no go, no.
You know.
We'll be back tomorrow.